Next, we have our second conference, the Spanish Perspective, the new challenges of mobility and the internationalization of Spanish universities in Africa by Jose Manuel Pingaron. Thank you very much, and the floor is yours. Well, thank you for that. Since I'm standing from a distance, I hardly believe that I will spray you from here. I beg your permission to remove my face mask. Hallelujah, I can breathe. Well, my first words are to thank the organizers of this very important seminar, to address you and establish some of the main guidelines on the Spanish internationalization strategy, focusing particularly in the connection between Spanish universities and African universities and the entire university system. Well, beyond universities, also the whole research system as the fundamental a pillar of modern society. Certainly, Spanish universities have been opening their classrooms and laboratories to the globalization of knowledge. It, that effort has noticeably accelerated in the past few years thanks to the significant disruptions that have taken place thanks to the scientific and technological revolution. For some years now, in Spain, we have adapted to the higher education European space, which has brought on a modernizing movement for exchange, mobility, and synergies in connection with our European partners. Certainly, the connections between our research groups and among our institutions and other groups beyond our borders, particularly in the latest European University alliances, have led to a qualitative leap that has given us the opportunity to participate in many of these European alliances, which in turn breathe a new life into the whole system. In Spain, we are committed to setting up an operational plan for the updating of the university system. Internationalization is a strategic need. It's not just a whim. It's a top priority for our faculties, our departments, and our research groups. And as we've heard this morning, such internationalization has to go beyond mobility. We need to institutionalize stable links with other universities and university systems. This is obviously a strategic challenge, and therefore Spain must pick up that challenge and respond with policies, resources, the removal of administrative hurdles, and with technical support that will allow us to be historically successful. Uh, and since this is a strategic objective, we need to internationalize based on 5 major criteria or principles. The first principle is we need a holistic, flexible vision about the internationalization process. It must be seen as a whole unit. Obviously, as the scope or part of the scope is European universities, but it also entails deeper connections with Latin America, Asia, the United States, and very especially Africa. We need to agree on a political front to favor international knowledge, know-how transfer by being present in more specific, smaller scale projects in the different areas of scientific and technological knowledge. The strategic plan must define the significant mobility of students and staff as a tool at the service of international teaching, learning, and researching, therefore a key factor for the success of internationalization. And the fifth factor is we need to mobilize resources in agreement with the challenge we have set for ourselves, and to a par with the investment other more advanced European countries are making. At the same time, this plan must reflect co-responsible efforts in the internationalization of teaching, research, technology transfer, innovation, and the dissemination of scientific, technological, and art knowledge, as well as the mobility of professors, administrative staff, and students alike. We need to insist on academic quality given to students and in drafting joint and global academic projects. Within such a global framework, how can we locate the cooperation between Spain and Africa? Perhaps some global numbers can help us better understand the opportunities and difficulties of this cooperation that are a priority to Spain today. During the year 2020 to 2021, public and private universities in Spain host 208,000 foreign students. Out of those, 87,000 are foreign students who are non-residents. In other words, students who come specifically to take their university studies. Another 66,000 are foreign students residing legally in Spain, sons and daughters of immigrant families, and nearly 56,000 students coming from temporary mobility programs. This whole group is approximately 12% of the total students in Spain. But if we only consider students for undergraduate and graduate studies not residing in Spain, which is the real thermometer for internationalization, the percentages boiled down to a mere 5%. Clearly, there is a lot of work ahead, although the pace of growth has picked up in the past few years for most Spanish universities. Students coming from some country in Africa, well, for the university year 20 to 21, there are 11,526, or 5% of the number of foreign students that have signed in for our universities. This number is clearly higher in some specific universities, like the Cartagena Polytechnical University, where the percentage reaches 18%, the Miguel Hernández University in Elche, the Almeria University, the Cadiz University, Rudy Virgili, the Lleida University, or the Granada University. One positive thing we observe is that the pace has picked up. Since between 2015 and 2021, the volume of foreign African students has grown by 42%. Now that is good news. Another very revealing fact is that half of those students come from Morocco with 6,726 students. Not surprising if you think about it. Next, but at a distance, Algeria, Egypt, Nigeria, Tunisia, Senegal, and Cameroon. We must, however, remember that we have students coming from 44 different African countries. If we go over to mere mobility among students, and I'm sure the director of CEPIE has told you about this mobility, and if not, he will very soon. I must say that within the Erasmus Plus program and as part of the international academic cooperation activities of CEPIE, the promotion, cooperation, and networking with African universities are acquiring an increasing relevance. Obviously, you know these data better than myself, but Sub-Saharan Association has 60% of the population under 30 years. 27 of the youngest countries in the world are in this region. And what happens in Africa matters in Europe. And what happens in Europe is also Africa's concern. Therefore, we must all be aware, and we are, that education is a very powerful tool for this cooperation. Awareness in the academic field is and remains a priority. The university population keeps growing in Africa, and their needs are not being fulfilled by the supply of higher education in their own countries or their continent, for that matter. We've already heard about the increased demand of university training. A growing number of African youths seek higher education abroad, linking that kind of education to economic opportunities in their own countries. With over 30,000 African students in the US, another 30,000 in the UK, and nearly 100,000 African students in France. Therefore, there are opportunities to attract talent that are not only real, but also very valuable. Western Africa contributes 1.5 million Spanish students out of the total global of 22 million studying Spanish as a second language. Senegal, with 205,000 Spanish students, is the third country in Sub-Saharan Africa, only running second to Ivory Coast, 560,000, and Benin, 412,000. Certainly, African students bring a priceless perspective to Spanish campuses. So one thing we do understand in the ministry is that we need to strengthen our associations with African universities in the framework of the Erasmus Plus programs to promote our studies in the region. But let me give you a little bit more of a personalized piece of data. In the part of the budget for Sub-Saharan Africa, in 2020's budget, we see approximately 4.7 billion euros with items for Africa, the Southern Cone, and other regions in terms of financial instruments for the cooperation for development, EDF, and Emergency Trust Fund for the EU. And just to finish with the numbers, let me give you some data for incoming and outgoing numbers for African countries. In the case of South Africa, and this is for 2020, a particularly difficult year. But I will also give you the numbers for 2019. In the case of South Africa, 177 people moved in 2020 and 136 in 2019. In Western Africa, 439 with 866 in 2019. For Africa, the Caribbean, and the Pacific, 187 in 19, 147 the previous year. So in total, mobility accounted for 1,053, whereas in 2019 there were 1,309. So, although there are links and exchanges between Spanish and Sub-Saharan universities within Erasmus Plus, we can still grow a lot more, not only in undergraduate students, but also in scientific cooperation projects. Among actions to strengthen academic cooperation, the Study in Spain Fair plays a fundamental role. Such fairs support and coordinate the presence of Spanish universities in different countries across the world with the dual objective of disseminating the power of our higher education institutions with a quality destination and to establish links and connections with local institutions. The organization of Study in Spain fairs in Europe has been motivated by the growing mutual interest from both institutions and students in possible destinations for postgraduate studies and postgraduate work. So far this year, CEPIE has organized two online fairs in Africa, one in Morocco on February 9th to 11th, and another one in Sub-Saharan Africa on May 5th and 6th. And I would now like to mention, well, Morocco, because it's a fundamental country in our connections to Africa, and on the other hand, about Sub-Saharan Africa. During the year 1819, our higher education institutions received 5,700 Moroccan students. Also, the Rectors' Conference of Spanish Universities identified Morocco as a preferential destination in Africa for events where students and institutions meet. And there is mutual cooperation between the Conference of Rectors in Spain and Morocco to establish such programs for exchange and cooperation. I also planned to tell you about our pilot program. Well, of course, since it's a pilot, we have restricted the program to Morocco, but it can be extended almost immediately to other countries. This program aims to understand the hurdles to internationalization when students from other countries come to Spain so that whenever possible, we can remove or lift those barriers. And this is drawn from the consulate data we get from visa applications and the time it takes to fill those requirements and the time needed to obtain residence cards and do permits. We created a task force between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and the Ministry of Universities to put together a pilot program to study these fundamental issues with Moroccan students to begin with, to see if we can minimize these difficulties. One thing I would keenly like to highlight, because it's a very successful program that can be extended to other African countries, is the Young Generation as Change Agents program. It's a project between the EU and Morocco, where Spain is the state participating on the side of the EU. The objective of the program is cooperation for the economic development of Morocco via a higher qualification of their nationals focused on strategic sectors and the implementation of entrepreneurship projects proposed by students. To this end, awards are enabled to launch these entrepreneurship projects in their communities of origin. This project has led to mobility assistance for the promotion of Spanish universities for 100 Moroccan students cherry-picked for a master's degree. This includes the final paper that is to be implemented as an entrepreneurship project in Morocco. Relatively not long ago, I had the honor to receive a visit from the Ministry of Universities and Science from Mauritania. And while discussing this kind of bilateral action between the EU and some specific countries, he looked very interested in this sort of circular project that lead to a better requalification of citizens, well, in his case, Mauritanian citizens, and we're studying the landscape to see what we can do to implement the Young Generation Project with Mauritania and any other countries interested. As I was saying, in Sub-Saharan Africa, the Study in Spain Fair has taken place in 7 countries: Benin, Ivory Coast, Gambia, Ghana, Equatorial Guinea, Nigeria, and Senegal. During the 18-19 school year, our institutions received 360 universities from the countries in the fair. Our area of influence expands to their entire territory of these 7 countries, to which we add Cameroon and Togo, since our data detected numerous connections to, or numerous logins to the fair. And 9 Spanish universities participated at such fair. So there are some key aspects I would like to insist on before I close. Africa as a continent is a priority for the internationalization of the Spanish university system, not just for student exchange, but also for an exchange of professors, researchers, for cooperation amongst institutions, and for a mutual assistance. Obviously, the most visible part of such cooperation are the students, but we do want to go one step further. And as President Cruz said this morning, we want to use Spanish universities as ambassadors for what Spain can do for Africa in the framework of this cooperation. We do want stronger, deeper, more efficient cooperation among peers and consistent with the needs of the Spanish university system and the African system. So, if I may, I would like to give you some specific examples. Not long ago, the president of the Spanish government paid a state visit to Libya. Well, in the conversations leading to that visit, we realized that one of the most important aspects for Libyan universities was establishing a memorandum of understanding among the 2 states for higher education specifically, because Libyan authorities are aware that higher education is a very powerful tool for the reconstruction of their country, and therefore they envisage higher education and universities as a particularly efficient tool for their reconstruction project. We already have examples, interesting examples in Spain on cooperation with African institutions. Well, the director of the Arab House is not present here, but we do have an Institute for Euro-Arabic Studies in Granada that is particularly relevant when it comes to connections, and politics, and customs of the north of Africa. I'm assuming you are familiar with the Northern African culture. I highly recommend going into the Euro-Arabic Foundation webpage because plenty of European projects are being channeled by this institution. And certainly we will be delighted to use the same tool or a similar one to launch projects funded by the EU to establish cooperation with other African countries. That's our main endeavor. We can already boast of several examples of particularly interesting cooperation projects. Cooperation between and among research projects between Spain and other countries. Certainly from the north of Africa, that much is true. But it is also true that there are university cooperation projects with Sub-Saharan Africa countries. Particularly, we've heard of programs with Senegal and Guinea, and therefore these cooperation projects can be seen as fertile ground for later reaching the entire African continent. So I would like to close with some, I believe, important conclusions. Holding all these ideas, these values, this cooperation at the forefront of our efforts, our ministry considers that one of its priorities as part of the internationalization strategy involves furthering our attractiveness as universities for African students so that they will come to our universities. We also aim to increase the number of African professors in our universities. As so far, we only have 75 professionals in that field. So we want to work along both fronts. Obviously, cooperation with students is a fundamental factor, but we also want to enhance our cooperation with African professors. To that end, we need to promote and reinforce specific programs for academic cooperation, not only in teaching, but also in research and technology transfer. And this must happen via mobility of students, professors, and researchers, and via joint teaching projects and research initiatives with Spanish African teams. Such specific programs, where universities are the protagonist, must be aligned with the strategy for Africa that was recently published for Spain. So our ministry, the Ministry of Universities, is decided to foster the internationalization of Spanish universities, and we are absolutely convinced that for this challenge, Africa must become one of the priorities of our university system. This is an opportunity that we cannot let go by as universities and as a country. Thank you.
Please, I don't know if we have any question. Now is your turn before we move into the panel discussion.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. Álvaro Dombriz from the Association of Spanish Researchers in Africa. Thank you for your presentation. From the scientific viewpoint and also from the teaching viewpoint, I would like to ask you if the ministry is considering the possibility of dual chairs, teachers or professors or researchers that can be working in Spain as civil servants, but also bilaterally in Africa. And if the ministry is thinking about the creation of chairs as you have in United States, for example, Cátedra Príncipe de Asturias in Georgetown, that will be Spanish chairs funded by Spain that could be located in Africa at a mid-term. Thank you for your interesting question. As you know, the chairs usually are developed by the universities, so it's not the ministry, with the exception of the chair Prince of Asturias. We in the ministry are not designing chairs. What we would do is to support and promote that universities do it, and with the idea of internationalizing Spanish universities, we will try to support in the funding of these type of chairs. I can nevertheless tell you that in the future law of universities, the possibility for this without all the bureaucratic problems, so that a teacher, a foreign teacher or researcher can come and work in Spain, is now being taken into account, so that this obstacle is no longer the case. Thank you. Do we have any other question? I would like to congratulate the General Secretary for the contents of his presentation, but I take the liberty to just be a bit daring here. We live at a time now on planet Earth where the circular economy, where climate change, CO2 emissions, the expansion of new technologies in the optimization of energy resources is at the daily dialogues of our public. And we in Casa Africa, in the Canary Islands, we see an increase of the interest by the public from different countries of West Africa that are willing to be trained and educated in these areas or fields. I'm not going to give a whole lecture, but Spain has to move away from classical approaches. And when I speak about classical, I speak about all the past policies in relation to Sub-Saharan Africa. We need to change, and we need to think in opening new horizons, not only so that consolidated companies can continue earning money, but to educate African citizens so that they can develop academic industries and different industries for the benefiting of the energy resources and the fight against this great evil today, which is the decrease of hydric resources. In all this world, we have a great future ahead in relation to education. And Spain, I believe, we are one of the flagship countries, as we have seen in all international conferences and in our own progress. So this is just a proposal, and this is nothing new, but this is a proposal for the Ministry of Universities. There's a whole new world to move away from the classical scheme of cooperation and to educate and to train in the real needs of the 21st century. Thank you. And that's the spirit of the project, Young Generation as Agents of Change with Morocco, to move from the classical model and to work towards a structure where students themselves, after conducting the master's study in Spain, can come to their country of origin with ideas and projects, with entrepreneurial ideas and projects that are related to this change needed for the better use of natural resources in their countries of origin. So I totally agree with you. Thank you so much. There will be no more time for questions. We are still behind, and without further ado, we're going to move to the next panel. Please, I would ask the panelists to come to the stage.
Bueno, pues continuamos entonces con...
We will resume our program, and we're now going to open the next panel discussion. For me, is one of the key subjects, the promotion of Spanish language in Sub-Saharan Africa. It's been said here that Africa is just 14 kilometers away. Spain is a bicontinental country. More than 2 million Spaniards live geographically in Africa, in the Canary Islands and in Ceuta and Melilla. On the other hand, Spain has a Spanish-speaking community of almost 500 million people, not only in Iberoamerica, also in United States and Canada. But when it comes to Sub-Saharan Africa, things change. We have also been able to know here that in Africa, almost 2 million students are learning Spanish. So it's one of the continents where Spanish is really learned, and this is true. But nevertheless, we should see what is the impact, the implications of that this number of African students are learning Spanish. It's difficult to set the link between this huge number of African students learning Spanish and what is the impact in the internationalization of our education, in the internationalization of our companies in Africa. Spanish is in great part considered as a language for culture. And in this panel discussion, I would like to see how do we promote the Spanish language better, not only to teach it as a language of culture, but how do we make it as an instrument so that young Africans can really use Spanish from their professional and scientific viewpoint or technological viewpoint, so that Spanish in Africa can really become a useful language, taking into account all the lessons learned and by all the institutions that are here represented. Online, we have the Vice Chancellor of OISA, the biggest university, online university in the world. She has to leave, so she will speak first. And if you agree, I will follow Raimundo's scheme, and I will give all the speakers one after the other, so they limit their time to 10 minutes. Please, it's very important that you stick to the time allotted. I will introduce all of them just before their presentation. So I'm going to introduce Guzmán Palacio, Director of Cultural and Scientific Relations at the ICID. He has a degree in law by Comillas University, and he started diplomatic career in 2005. He's been in Mexico, Nicaragua, and Paraguay. He's been Secretary of International Cooperation at the Caribbean and also at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the European Union and Cooperation. He's currently Director of Cultural and Scientific Relations at the ICID. You have the floor. Sí, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Diego. First, obviously, I would like to thank the Diplomatic School for having welcomed us in this venue and the colleagues of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the European Union Cooperation, and also to Casa Africa for this very useful seminar. As Diego said, this panel discussion has a different viewpoint from the previous one. The problem that we face when enhancing the academic exchange is always a linguistic barrier that is an institutional challenge for Spain and for our university system. Is an obstacle that is difficult to overcome with the existing resources and also due to the size of the African continent. I wanted to make reference about the institution I direct. I wanted to refer to a very specific mechanism, but I didn't want to start my presentation without a wider background of the ICID. As you well know, the law of international cooperation and the statute of the ICID entrust my institution not only cultural promotion abroad, but also as a second specific mandate is the promotion of the Spanish language. And we share this with our brother institute, Instituto Cervantes. But how do we promote Spanish language in the African continent? Internally, there is a sub-direction of university cooperation that has the mission of organizing this cooperation abroad, and it also handles the scholarship system that is managed by the ICID in close cooperation with Carolina Foundation. On the 17th of February last year, the King and Queen of Spain and the Minister Martinez Laya presented the more than 1,000 scholarships of Spanish cooperation that we manage every year between the ICID and Foundation Carolina. Half of those scholarships are managed through the Direction of Cultural Affairs. And maybe you don't know that they are not only scholarships for foreign students coming to Spain, but there is an important percentage of those scholarships devoted to Spanish citizens that are being educated abroad. Within this mission, I wanted to make a special reference to what we call the assistants, which are Spanish teachers that for a period of time, an academic year and sometimes 2 years, they coordinate the training of Spanish language in public universities abroad. Today, the agency has around 150 of those internships in Africa. We have 15. I will then do the breakdown by countries, and the cost in Sub-Saharan Africa, that is with a cost of around 250,000 euros. Those interns, as I say, they are teachers that have a scholarship, and they provide the service in a public university in a third country. The system is organized through a call in the state official bulletin, where we have a list of the universities where you can do this internship, and through a rigorous process, there is a selection or recruitment process of those teachers so that they can go to third countries to teach Spanish. Before that, and what our embassies do is also very important. There's whole work of contacting universities to select those universities that might have a base of students and some resources that will allow us to set a Spanish department. They are usually state universities, but we have all types of universities. And once the selection process is over in the agency, we sign a memorandum of understanding with the university, and there is a sharing of the expenses there. What the ICID funds is the travel maintenance and the insurance of the intern, the corresponding university pays for the daily costs, sometimes even the housing, and it enhances all the necessary mechanisms so that the teachers can perform their task. From here, in some occasions, and based to the ODS 17, public and private alliances in Cabo Verde, we have this type of partnership that is related to the fact that this network that is quite scarce at the African continent is now beginning to expand. What is the advantage of this compared to others? The flexibility of this one is a flexible instrument. You can call for those internships from one year into another. Of course, there are always budgetary situations, but it's not really complex. There are not a structural costs related to create an institute or a center with all those chapters. It's just the training of Spanish, is a Spanish citizen that will provide this service abroad. It also has the advantage that it helps to support our academic system. These people have an alternative outside Spain to carry out this task, and obviously it has the great advantage that it allows to expand our network for those that access the Spanish language together with the Cervantes Institute, and Rafael will now make a presentation. On some occasions, we use those internships so that certain coordination tasks can also be carried out through those professionals. As I said, this is key, is a very important model, and maybe we would like to have more, but undoubtedly it helps in the education of African young students in Spanish so that they can then access graduate and postgraduate scholarships offered by my institution. I would leave it here, but then in the questions and answers, I can give you further information, including the number of countries where we have Spanish interns, Spanish teachers in Sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you very much, Guzman. And yes, those programs and the usefulness of these programs can be seen due to the demand we have in our embassies to have access to these sort of programs. And we're very happy that the ICID is revisiting this figure after a crisis, and I hope that we have an important number of those teachers in Africa that link universities and higher education with the teaching of Spanish as a second language. We're now going to give the floor to Pulen Lenkagula, Vice Rector of the UNISA University in South Africa. Pulen Lenkagula is a South African university teacher, and she is a doctor in ethics of bioprospection in 2016. He's been the dean of students at Witwatersrand University. Before joining to the Free State University, he was vice rector of institutional change, student affairs until May 2018. In 2020, he was appointed as the vice rector of UNISA, the best woman that is a vice rector of university. UNISA is the distance university largest in the world, and I believe that her presentation can be a great illustration about the importance of teaching languages in universities as a complement of what was introduced by Guzman, and not only teaching of Spanish as a second language, but all languages, so that we have an idea of how important this is.
Very much for being there. Sorry for keeping you waiting so much. I know you are in a hurry. You have to go somewhere else. So the floor is yours. And again, thank you very much.
Buenas tardes, and thank you very much for the opportunity. I definitely would like to concur with colleagues who have spoken before around the imperative of languages, especially Spanish, in the context of Southern Africa, but also in the international environment. I just want to thank the organizers of this event, the Ministry of International Affairs and Cooperation, CASA Africa, Ministry of Universities, Spanish Service for Internationalization Education for this invite. I took the position of the principal and vice chancellor, meaning a rector of the University of South Africa in January 2021 for the University of South Africa to reclaim its space as an innovative leader in distance and open education, and to make sure that the university contributes to South Africa-wide goals on sustainable development and as well the global knowledge development. I want to ensure that the university is receptive to gender transformation for all women, to new catalytic niche areas of research, as well as the expansive footprint of languages. For in the international arena, not knowing multiplicities of language can put us in the back foot. And we definitely, as the university, and with Spanish universities, centers, corporate and innovation hubs, so that we advance exchange and engagement with Spain. I'm mindful of the enormity of the task that I've taken over, for our university has existed for the last 148 years as the largest online university and the oldest in the world, meaning we were founded on the 26th of June 1873 and pioneered tertiary distance learning entwined with the post office system. Since the introduction of the Constitution of South Africa in the democratic dispensation, which was adopted on 4th February 1997, Section 6 of the Constitution of South Africa provides the backdrop to which UNISA language policy and the list of 11 languages of South Africa to be Sepedi, Sesotho, Setswana, Siswati, Chipenda, Chisonga, Afrikaans, English, isiNdebele, isiXhosa, and isiZulu. Section 6 of the Constitution endorses the notion of functional multilingualism. Section 6 provides also that the state and by extension public institutions such as UNISA must take practical and positive measures to elevate the status and advance the use of local indigenous languages, whilst ensuring that the international languages also find expression. The language clauses of the Constitution are furthermore supported by the Bill of Rights, which recognizes in view of the fact that the Constitution requires all languages to enjoy parity of esteem and to be treated equitably, UNISA has taken cognizance of the provision of the Use of Language Act 12 of 2012 and has aligned its language policy and practices with this act. UNISA recognizes that where English and Afrikaans already have the capacity to operate in higher education as languages of science, research, and training, the university proactively supports African languages with a view to them becoming languages of science and teaching at higher university level. Precisely because of this, and as defined in the language policy, both as media of communication and as languages of learning and teaching, we have which have been historically disadvantaged, the university systematically makes resources available for the development of the 9 African languages for the benefit of the university and the country. And possibly, the examples of Spain could be resourceful in how we can develop as a university languages from Africa to becoming languages of science. The department offers the opportunity, the Department of Linguistics and Modern Languages at UNISA offers opportunities to enroll for undergraduate majors in French, Mandarin, linguistics, and Portuguese, and honors degrees and master's and doctoral qualification. It is important to note at undergraduate level, our modules are studied as part of Bachelor of Arts specialization degrees and Bachelor of Education degrees. Our modules fall under the following disciplines: French, linguistics, Mandarin, Portuguese, as I've stated. Our postgraduate qualifications are offered at 3 levels: honors qualifications, Bachelor of Arts honors in Applied Linguistics, honors in Linguistics, Modern European Languages and Literature, where Spanish could have a strong presence if the requisite knowledge base were available. Bachelor of Arts in Honors in Translation Studies, but also Master's and doctoral qualifications, particularly in Applied Linguistics as full research dissertation, Masters of Arts in French as a full dissertation, Masters of Linguistics, and in general. So sociolinguistics and Doctor of Philosophy in Languages, Doctor of Philosophy in Linguistics, Languages and Literature, and Linguistics, Literature and Translation, and Language Linguistics. And these are for Portuguese and the language that we refer to. As UNISA, we welcome academic exchanges and the improvement and learning opportunities for Spanish. The Department of Linguistics and Modern Languages within our university has invited Professor Pedro Alvarez Mosquera from the University of Salamanca, Spain, and as a research fellow in the department as an initiative to ensure that creating a convivial environment for Spanish. His research seeks firstly to attain results from the implicit language attitudes towards English among South Africa's language-speaking people, and secondly, to understand the English attitudes among students of mixed descent in Cape Town. And he has told in a colloquium how diverse and multilingual South Africa is. He's indicated that with English as lingua franca of South Africa, only about 10% of population are English native speakers. This means millions of South Africans express themselves in English with an accent as it is a second language, and you'll get it from me as well. UNISA welcomes academic exchanges with Spain. Furthermore, as a partnership with the Institute for Global Dialogue, which is a think tank within UNISA, which strives towards becoming a globally recognized policy think tank on international relations and a choice through independent cutting-edge policy research and analysis, catalytic dialogue and stakeholder interface on global dynamics, which have an impact in South Africa and Africa. And through this IGD, we definitely think there could be a quick win for Spanish institutions to ensuring that Spanish teaching, learning, research, and exchanges find expression. In effort to strengthen our global position and to consolidate around our strengths in research, in dialogue, and crystallizing our programs, we have foreign policy analysis, geopolitical dynamics and governance, international diplomacy and science diplomacy, and we think this is quite an important area where we have already analyzed possibilities. We also have a UNISA Center for Latin America and Caribbean. Within this commitment, which was started in 1980, we wish to resuscitate it in order that the mandated way of revitalizing the partnerships would work for transdisciplinary research, information, engaged scholarship on political, economic, and social cultural dynamics of Latin America and the Caribbean, and within the language question that we are discussing. The vision and mission are becoming a repository of knowledge, insights, and information on dynamics of Latin America and the Caribbean within the context of global south broadly as well as within the interchanges between the global south and the global north. We seek to excel in producing knowledge and information on the dynamics as part of our learning programs as well in order to ensuring that the strategic objectives of the university, such as enhancing scholarly knowledge, and basic understanding of global South countries and regions through studies on Latin America and the Caribbean relations with Africa, to establish with research networks with counterparts in South America and the Caribbean region to leveraging research and discussions for better engagement between Africa and the rest to promote better informed interest and greater awareness of Latin America and to be the platform for cultural and other exchanges. And we think the strong partnership of Spain in this regard and with its geographic regions provides an impetus for an improved relationship and expansion of Spanish footprint within the university, the country, but also the continent, as our universities is located within multiple environments, including in Ethiopia. The UCLA core activities are research, and since you'll be getting my speech in text, I would like just to highlight some of these so that I can get to the 10 minutes that have been requested. So it's to ensure that the various themes relating to multilateral regional country issues are attended to, but also mentoring young researchers and scholars registered for master's and doctoral studies in global South studies, as well as fieldwork-based and commissioned research in varied countries. So the political dynamics concerning relations with African institutions, countries, and people, inclusive of security questions, state systems, foreign policy, state-society relationships, personalities, regional integration, and trans-ocean relations, and so forth. Economic dynamics relating to Africa and economic development, social dynamics relating to people relations, including civil society formation, arts, culture, language, education, health, linkages, and the legacy of slavery. And publications are core to this as well as engaged scholarship. We also have the journal, La. UCLA uses various kinds of publications to disseminate its knowledge and information, including e-publications for reflections of topical developments in the broad region from time to time. The editorial policy of the journal committees made up of experts from Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean, UNISA, and other stakeholders. And therefore, we would definitely be interested if there is participation from others. And funding is often from collaborative investments by UNISA and related arrangements. The key stakeholders for the university expression in this regard is the academy, civil society, diplomatic corps, government, especially our Department of International Relations, and the university system. For us in centering the teaching of Spanish as a foreign language in South Africa, Colegio Espanol is based in Pretoria. It's a Spanish and cultural center that offers classes in Spanish to children and adults through interactive and communicative activities. And C International is based in Cape Town, is a Spanish learning center and it's based on its quality standards and is run by Mr. Eduardo Ake, former head of Spanish department at Wits University and a lecturer from our university on Hispanic American literature, translation theory from January 2011 to December. Witwatersrand University, which is one of the 26 universities in South Africa, and the University of Pretoria and Cape Town all have schools of languages, including Spanish for undergraduate studies. There are private language schools in the major cities that teach Spanish as a foreign language, like Leading Language, Spanish Academy of South Africa, Casa Escuela de Español, and many others across South Africa. I'm of the view that there are many opportunities that we must pursue. I'm delighted to know that South Africa has now been included as part of Africa Plan for 2019 as an anchor country together with Nigeria and Ethiopia, and that with Angola and Senegal are 5 priority partners for Spain foreign policy in Sub-Saharan Africa, and that these countries are considered key partners for the policy concerning Africa due to their populations, their economy, but also political profile, and to a large extent because of the stability and growth of the neighboring countries, as well as those Africa as a whole depend on the stability of their growth. Furthermore, I'm happy to acknowledge that Spain is willing to maximize relations with these 3 designated anchor countries. And as such, we as the largest university in the continent with 400,000 registered students at undergraduate and postgraduate levels, and having spawned the open distance e-learning multimodality as an inventive approach to reaching to multiplicities of students wherever they are, in whatever time they are, using pedagogies that are mediated through technologies and mediating distance. We think we can play the role of being the anchor partner to the advancement of Spanish language, but also attended issues in our areas of teaching and learning, research and innovation, as well as engaged scholarship. We also realize that the multilateral initiatives, such as the African Union initiatives, as well as the respective regional blocs, in order to develop broad strategic partnership, since Spain's objective is to help fully develop the potential for wealth, for job creation, for science diplomacy. We at UNISA, through our partner institutions, are willing and ready to play an important role to achieving these goals. But we also recognize in languages there is multiplicities of opportunities for building thriving communities, internationalization, as well as broad impact that exposes our students to multilingualism, multicultural encounters, but also the role of exchanges as important levers for improving science development and intellectual formation as global citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much for your intervention. I think it has been very, very enlightening. Thank you for reminding us the importance of Spanish and especially the potential that Spanish could have in Africa. No sé si seguir en inglés porque se ha apagado la pantalla.
I don't know if you're still there because our screen went blank. At any rate, we expected Madame Kabule to attend in person, but due to COVID restrictions, she could not do so. So thank you for attending online. And without further ado, I will now leave you with Solano Ortiz from the Cervantes Institute. By the way, our soon-to-be ambassador in Ivory Coast. Rafael has a degree in law And before he joined the Cervantes Institute, he also worked as a consultant for the Secretary of Cooperation for Latin America and the Caribbean. He has been the General Consul for Spain in Cordova, and he is an attaché for Southern Connections. Well, thank you, Diego, for that quick presentation. I would also like to thank the Diplomacy School for hosting us, the House of Africa, and for the organization of this symposium and for their effort to get the Cervantes Institute to participate in this dialogue with you. If I may, and before I talk about Southern Africa, I would like to give you some brushstrokes on something you probably know very well, which is precisely the importance of the Spanish language across the world. Spanish is certainly a global communication language, and there are basically two dimensions to that: numbers and quality. We're nearly 490 million who use Spanish as a mother tongue. We're the second most spoken language with most native speakers after Mandarin Chinese. And if we add to those natives the number of linguistically competent individuals in Spanish, we come close to nearly 600 million Spanish speakers. But it's not only about numbers, it's also a qualitative aspect. Spanish speakers are nearly 80% of the world GDP, and speaking Spanish has an important economic value. Economic and trade relations are very powerful when they are language-centered, and without a doubt, the new boost of Latin American economies and the role Spain plays as a bridge between those economies and the rest of the world turn the Spanish language into a very attractive one for business. Also, on the internet, we're the third most spoken language in social media networks like Twitter and Facebook, and also as a further step to being a global language, we are increasingly relevant in the fields of science and technology, certainly second to English, but that's the last frontier we need to cross to fully assert ourselves as a global language. So I was saying that there is a combination of quantitative and qualitative aspects that helps us understand the reasons why anyone would want to study Spanish. It's a blend of cultural and practical aspects. The new boost of the Spanish language is also linked to the culture it represents and encompasses, and that's nearly 500 million individuals, 500 million Spanish speakers with a rich wealth of literature and history. But there are many other aspects involving also cultural, popular culture, pop culture, TV shows, and soccer. Let us not forget, someone in India or Japan or Senegal may decide to study Spanish for one of these reasons. If I may remind you, there are now 22 million people studying Spanish as a second language around the world, a number that keeps growing, and it is 60% higher than the number only one decade ago. So these 22 million people are concentrated in a few countries, 8 million in the US, 6 million in Brazil. But there's also a whole continent where the learning of Spanish as a second language is gaining importance, and that is Africa, particularly Southern Africa. There have been university departments for teaching Spanish in Spain for centuries. The Cervantes Institute has 10 centers in the north of the region, with numerous centers for regulated and non-regulated teaching of Spanish in countries like Nigeria or Tunisia. However, in sub-Saharan Africa, the situation is slightly more complex and variable with fewer data than we would like to have. Some of these data have been provided by the Secretary General for Universities. And these are some spectacular data. Ivory Coast, 566,000 Spanish students, Benin 412, 205 in Senegal, 193 in Cameroon, and 177,000 in Gabon. According to the latest yearbook of the Cervantes Institute, there are approximately 1.5 million Spanish students in southern Africa. To provide some context to these numbers, I can say that in the 13 countries where there are most Spanish students, 5 are sub-Saharan. Ivory Coast is the country number 6 in terms of the number of Spanish students around the world. Benin is 9, Cameroon is 12, Gabon 13. So it's an undubitable linguistic reality that Spanish is expanding in sub-Saharan Africa. So, since we don't have a lot of time left before your questions and comments, I will go straight into the efforts the Cervantes Institute is doing in the region and how we are working with other partnering institutions. Well, just as Spain's interest in sub-Saharan Africa has grown in the past few years, as proven by our African approach, steering our actions between now and 2023, the Cervantes Institute has also crossed the line from northern Africa into the south to awaken a more vivid attention in the south. Our strategic plan for 2018 to 2020 already established two fundamental areas for expanding our activity and our network. One on the United States and the other one in sub-Saharan Africa. And the present strategic plan, it's a 21 to 23 plan, also states that it is a priority for the Cervantes Institute to potentiate the teaching of Spanish in Sub-Saharan Africa and open new delegations in the region. So how do we expect to be there in the next few years? Well, the deployment of the Cervantes network in Southern Africa can certainly be improved. Right now, we have 88 points in 46 cities in the world, but we're only present in two southern African countries, and that's very recent. Although in the case of Senegal, we already have a Spanish learning center since 2008, but it only became officially Cervantes Institute last year. And this year, due to the COVID crisis, we cannot actually make that center operational for the moment. But this comes from a set of academic and cultural objectives. And I'm saying cultural because the mandate of the Cervantes Institute is not only promoting Spanish as a language across the world, but also to disseminate Spanish culture across the planet. So, the academic objectives for the Cervantes Institute in Sub-Saharan Africa involve cooperating with local institutions and developing curricula for teaching Spanish and for forming or training teachers. Also, the certification on the use of the Spanish language, which is one of the priorities of the Institute. At the same time, ongoing support and training to Spanish teachers that teach Spanish as a foreign language so that they can become our ally in the region. And last, a decided support to Hispanicity, the creation of Hispanistic societies wherever they do not exist and where they exist to contribute to their visibility and to publish their research work. But also in the cultural field, the Cervantes Institute has some priorities to develop in Southern Africa, which are highly linked not only to a cultural schedule displaying the modern contemporary Spain and helping build the narrative we present to the world, but also to help our cultural activity in Sub-Saharan Africa as a back and forth bridge to favor the exchange of experiences, mobility, and mutual knowledge. So, the spearhead of our work in the region starts in Senegal. As I was saying a while ago, this country ranks second in terms of people studying Spanish as a second language. This center will be operational during starting the second half of this year, and they will develop their activity not only for teaching Spanish, but also to extend their activities throughout the region, particularly in Western Africa. At the same time, by opening this center in Senegal, we brought the chair we had in Dakar to Senegal. We have a professor in the Abidjani embassy to favor the presence of the Cervantes Institute in that country and to establish cooperation connections with the multiple universities and professors' associations in that country, favoring ongoing training to professors. Also, as part of the Institute's operational plans, there is the creation of an observatory of the Spanish language in Sub-Saharan Africa to give us clear data about the learning needs in different countries to customize our offering to such needs. About this project, well, we still have some fine-tuning to do, but I can tell you about it if you have questions. Also, in the entire region, we have already set up 23 DL centers to take the exam for the Spanish-speaking certification, and we also have centers for the CL test, which is based on an online test, which has been particularly favored in the past few years thanks to the joint work with the African General Directorate. Finally, let me tell you about some of the activities the Cervantes Institute has launched along with other institutions, which we aim to reinforce in the next few years. First of all, we have academic missions, that's what we call them. Since we cannot be present in many of the countries in the region, at least regularly, we send task forces, groups of teachers that can contact teachers' associations in the region to provide updates in learning Spanish as a second language. Since 2019, in an agreement that has been recently renewed, the Institute has been sending these technical task forces to different countries in the region. Usually, these visits are approximately 1 week, and they gather 100 to 200 teachers from Senegal, Benin, Ivory Coast to provide support and training, which is favored by the new possibilities of online contact for training on virtual platforms. Last year, due to the incidence of COVID-19, these academic missions were temporarily suspended, but we trust that this year will bring the necessary conditions so that these task forces can resume their work in Mozambique, Ghana, and Senegal. Regardless, our tight cooperation with the Spanish Agency for Cooperation since 2015, the Cervantes Institute has been providing this service of academic missions from all the way from Jamaica to Mauritania, and will continue to send these teams because we believe it's a very important resource to help the validators of our language, which are Spanish teachers abroad. And thanks to our fruitful cooperation with the African team. We also have a working agreement along with our Ministry of Defense to favor online teaching of Spanish to military for citizens in Cape Verde or Mauritania. We work on gatherings for Hispanistic students, gathering African individuals interested in the Spanish culture. These meetings are held every 2 years. In 2019, the meeting was held in the Canary Islands in Spain, a very successful meeting that we expect to summon again in November this year. We work with other relevant organizations like Women for Africa, where we have an action protocol which aims to draft user manuals in Spanish that do take the African reality into account. For this purpose, we need the cooperation of other public or private associates that can help us understand the concepts of culture and teaching in an African context so that those who want to learn Spanish can do so in a more familiar context. And since Equatorial Guinea is the only country in Sub-Saharan Africa that holds Spanish as one of its official languages, our work aims to give visibility to African literature in Spanish, accompanied by ongoing training of Spanish teachers. So, in sum, I would like to highlight the renewed importance and the absolute priority it is for South Africa or Southern Africa is for the Cervantes Institute. Let us not forget that for several reasons, the Cervantes Global Network had not been able to open a new center since 2012. So it is a source of joy that the new center we're opening is in Southern Africa, the first center to ever host the Cervantes Institute in the southern part of Africa. So let's see what happens with our presence in Ivory Coast, and let's see where our observatory for the Spanish language will be located. Of course, we will make use of the new advantages of digital platforms and social media to be there with our main allies in Sub-Saharan Africa, Hispanists and Spanish teachers. And I will stop here because I don't want to hug the microphone. But if you have any questions or comments, I would be delighted to answer those during the QA session. Well, thank you, Rafa. And via your person, I would like to thank the Cervantes Institute because in all of our endeavors with Africa, we've always had your eager cooperation. So good luck in your new destination, which is such an important country for the teaching of Spanish. So without further ado, let's move over to our next speaker, Mr. Duguay, Secretary General for the Ministry of Education of Guinea-Conakry, to tell us about the teaching of Spanish in his country and his continent. Thank you. Floor is yours, sir. Thank you very much and good afternoon. Well, considering that previous speakers have said much of what I intended to say, I guess my participation will be short. I will focus my speech on the specific case of Guinea. Cooperation, or rather the teaching of the Spanish language, started off in our country in the late 60s with the cultural cooperation with Cuba. I think the first time I visited Cuba was in 1964. Many students came back with a diploma, some of them two. What I mean is they took a specialty course in Cuba and they married Cubans, so they came back home with their Cuban spouses. And those Cuban migrants established themselves and started teaching Spanish until the 1970s, when the School of the Spanish Language was opened in the two faculties existing at the same time, the universities of Canary and Cancun. They taught Spanish, English, and German. Later on, with the mobility of officials, that school of Spanish was closed. The English one wasn't, and it is still, as a matter of fact, functioning. Then, in 1992, instead of a chair at the university, a Spanish language department was implemented with the support of the Western University in Santiago de Cuba. So, with the connections between the two universities, the Santiago University and the Conakry University, that school was opened, but after forming two groups, the cooperation was closed due to travel and payment issues. So that study for Spanish had to be complemented with some study in, or some minor or major in art. At the same time, the British consul realized that English was going down as Spanish and Russian were gaining popularity. At that time, he provided some additional support to the Department of English. And actually, he wanted to take the English department out of the university and create a separate institute for teaching English. And also, Egypt came over to request that an Arabic language department be opened at the university, to which we obliged. With the passing of years, Spanish was resumed in the faculty, but it was closed again due to a lack of professors. And currently, we are in the process of calling for Spanish professors. We called the Cervantes Institute to help us reopen the Spanish department, because children study Spanish in Guinea high schools, but once they reach university level, they don't have a Spanish department to continue their Spanish studies. So as I was saying, if kids learn Spanish before they reach university, instead of they can come to Europe by plane legally instead of risking their lives at sea. So we need to keep that Cervantes Institute project alive to save thousands of lives, thousands of people who cross the ocean facing enormous perils. And with thanks to the new ambassador that is giving us a lot of support, Christian Calderon, we are trying to reopen the Spanish department at the university.
Otherwise, it's going to be a bit difficult. It'll be as with Russian. When you get university teachers in Guinea, out of 5, 2 might speak Russian. So, but there are no Russian courses in any school. Russian is only spoken in former Soviet Union countries, but Spanish is spoken throughout the world, so it's not the same. We contacted the ambassador and moved around the different universities in Conakry. The ambassador realized the desire from university students to learn Spanish and also come to Spain to continue their education. But because the higher education system in Spain, I'm not going to say that is the best in Europe, but at least it's one of the best in Europe. I myself studied in Cuba, and I know how higher education works here in Spain. Stay in China. I'm not saying that our students all should come. Just 2 languages, either Spanish or English. Otherwise, you cannot travel through the world. So this panel means an opportunity for me. So on behalf of the Ministry of Higher Education of Guinea, to ask for help to Cervantes Institute to open a Spanish
The
Dorothy Kelly, Vice Rector of Internationalization at Granada University, is one of the universities with more cooperation agreements and for long with Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. In her long CV, I would like to highlight that she studied translation and interpretation at Heriot Watts in Edinburgh, and she is a doctor by Granada University. She is a chair at the Department of Translation and Interpretation in Granada University. Since 2008, she is Vice Rector of International Relations and Cooperation. She was a member of the Committee of Experts of the European Union for the design and implementation of the European Master on Translation. Without further ado, you have the floor, Dorothy. Thank you, Diego. I would like to thank you for the kind invitation to invite me in this panel discussion. I therefore like to thank the organizers for the initiative of organizing this event at a very punctual time. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs Cooperation and the European Union, to the Diplomatic School, Casa Africa, the Ministry of Universities, and obviously to ACPE, all present here. Thank you. When we think about cooperation, we don't always think about academic cooperation, but academic cooperation is key. After all, we have been listening this morning that I'm not going to repeat. I would also feel so happy to see you face to face. It's a great pleasure to speak in a room full of people instead of just speaking to a screen. And I believe that we are all happy and we all feel a bit optimistic so that we can go back to this type of face-to-face events that are so important when we talk about cooperation. Interpersonal relations are the basis for cooperation or academic cooperation. This event is organized at a very timely moment. The African continent is now a priority, and we can say that it was about time it became a priority. It's a continent that has been underrepresented in all the internationalization plans and also in the discussion about the internationalization of universities. And maybe here I would like to insist, as the General Secretary said in his presentation, about an idea of a holistic, cross-sectorial and comprehensive internationalization that is not only based on mobility, that is not only based on attracting international students to our universities because we like to be well located in the rankings, but a holistic internationalization that will help us all in this need to educate global citizens for the future of our planet. And the second key mission of university, that is research applied to the Global Agenda 2030. That is also, there are also the two missions of our universities. I should also say that I was very happy to see that in a session on academic cooperation, internationalization of the academic internationalization, to have a panel on the teaching of Spanish. We've been considering the Spanish language as an asset for the internationalization of Spain, not only universities. And not so long ago, it said that the only way to internationalize academic activity was through the English language. And I believe that this idea is not only old-fashioned, but it's also quite limiting. This language, as has been expressed by the rest of the panelists, so I'm not going to insist on figures or data. It's clear that for Spanish universities, Spanish language is an asset that we should benefit from and that we should optimize in our internationalization policies. Part of our internationalization policies are also our linguistic policies, and that had two main pillars in universities until not so long ago. The second is this pending subject of multilingualism in Spain. This is still a pending subject, and we have a lot to learn from the African continent, even though progress has been made in Spain and in knowledge, especially based on the English language, but without forgetting the importance of other languages. But the main pillar of our linguistic policy is the promotion of the Spanish language in our teaching, and also as a language for science. That's very important, and we can see it in the area of social science and humanities, where Spanish language has an important role, maybe less so in technological or scientific areas, but clearly we at university level, we claim this role and the importance of the Spanish language for our internationalization and for the education of critical global citizens, so that we can make progress in the Agenda 2030. I'm going to very briefly summarize my presentation due to time, but I will introduce some of the actions and activities that we have been conducting at university levels to promote the Spanish language in different ways. In university, we usually try our activities to be cooperation activities at the form of bilateral cooperation agreements or multilateral ones through networks of universities. And this is more and more the case now in order to optimize our own potential. Something that I believe is important, we try to coordinate, not to duplicate or replicate efforts. If there is a Cervantes Institute in a specific place, it doesn't make sense the universities to start working with other universities, because this Instituto Cervantes already fills this gap. But there are many, many cities, as Rafael has already introduced, where the Instituto Cervantes does not access and where universities are present. And in this regard, I would like to say that obviously we offer Spanish as a second language, face-to-face. Students come to our universities, to our classrooms, or we move our teachers to our partner universities. We also use online teaching, and we have learned during the pandemic the value of online education. We have developed an incredible ability for online learning and teaching in the last year. We do it in different centers. Each university is different. They have their own language laboratory, international courses, language institute, but almost all universities have one, not only for language. Diego said, how do we make Spanish useful? I believe Rafael gave a very clear response about this, and it is also true that if we work not only with the general knowledge of Spanish, but also with Spanish for specific purposes like trade purposes or defense purposes or scientific purposes, then I believe we have a lot to offer at university level. We also work as a certificating agencies. Some of our universities have our own qualifications that complement the Instituto Cervantes certification. Qualifications are very important in the area of promoting learning of a second language. We also organize what we call courses from scratch for those students that want to come to a study in Spain, that are devoted not only to the learning of Spanish, but also to get to know the place where they will study with their own terminologies and their own concepts in Spain that can be different from their countries of origin. Obviously, those students then might need to compete in order to be accepted in certain degrees, but we offer this specific training for them. We also promote the learning of Spanish with our partner universities with different instruments which are very similar to the IECIF or the Instituto Cervantes, and that can be summarized in lecturers. We don't have the same figures as the IECIF, but the partner universities that need us to send them those lecturers, there is number of them, and we can send them to our partner universities about the African continent. And my university, University of Granada, we send lecturers to Moroccan universities and also to universities in Togo. We concentrate our effort in just one country or two countries, not to lose some of our resources, which has been some of the problems of cooperation and academic cooperation, and to complement those lectureships that have the advantage to be a permanent presence in a partner university. We have also set Spanish language and cultural centers, not, of course, trying to be there where the Instituto Cervantes is not present, in provincial or smaller cities where big institutions may not be present. Small centers for Spanish language and culture that do not only teach Spanish, but they also offer library services, organize cinema events or cultural events around the Spanish language at the same level as a university can do so, usually outside the capital cities. And this is something that we should take into account. What else do we do? We have provided support to many partner universities in the design of their plans of studies to teach Spanish as a second language. The Vice Minister spoke about the need to give continuity and sustainability to the teaching and learning of Spanish as a second language in African languages. That requires stable and consolidated departments of Spanish language. That, so we need to train the trainers, but also teaching materials, and we can offer digital materials, teaching materials through our publishing houses, and in our own center we can teach the teachers through our official programs, master programs, postgraduate programs, but also ad hoc programs that we can organize for a specific partner university, and also through our researchers, our Hispanists that are researching in our universities and have a lot to say in this support to design the study plans, everything related to postgraduate programs, the need for this training to be at different levels and not only extracurricular or at graduate level, but also to move into postgraduate level. How have we organized this? Well, with our own scholars, with our own funding, also with mixed activities with other institutions. We mentioned Mujeres por África, the Foundation Carolina. Also, we tried to get as much funding as we could from Cervantes institution or the regional government or the International Cooperation to Development in Andalusia agency. So we've tried to do a wise and smart use of the European Union funding, and it's true that in the last few years the importance of the international dimension of Erasmus Plus in mobility and in training projects for Africa, in a way, has given a great deal of energy to the possibilities of universities to work with Africa. So it's important always to do a strategic use of the funding, as I said, not to replicate, and also to guarantee a concentration of efforts that might have a real positive impact. I'm very happy when I heard the General Secretary to speak about new programs and new funding. And universities, if we miss something, is a great funding program, a large funding program to attract African students to Spain so they can conduct their studies, so that we can continue our relationship when they come back to their countries of origin. I was also very happy to speak about the dual chairs to respond to the question of our colleague from Ciudad del Cabo. This initiative gives us sustainability and continuity in those actions, which is also so relevant. We cannot just organize a chair that is bound to disappear. As the minister said, we should guarantee our actions to have continuity, and in this regard, this type of organization, dual chairs, to consolidate departments, all of them are so very important. And to say, as the General Secretary said at the end of his presentation, we should benefit from this moment now that Africa as a continent is a political priority for the European Union, is a political priority for Spain, and we should claim the role of the activities in this regard, and also at a time when in Spain there is a new internationalization strategy for the Spanish universities. In 2020, we had the last plan. Due to the pandemic, we don't have the new one yet, but the new strategy will be more holistic, and it will be a great opportunity to guarantee that Africa is present in those plans, in this specific plan. I would like to leave it very clear, and I believe I speak on behalf of all the universities here present, when I say that we universities are really available for the IC, for Instituto Cervantes, and for our African partner universities to make progress in everything they need. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Dorothy, and thank you for your presentation once again. And we spoke about this in our department. Sometimes we just don't have the information of everything that is being carried out by the university. So this type of seminars allow us to share all this information, the possibility of new cooperation among ourselves, and so that we work together. Thank you again. It's really late. I don't know how you feel, if you feel like asking questions, or would we rather break for lunch? I give you the chance for one or two questions if you're interested, and then we will break for lunch. Do we have any question? If there are no further questions, I'm not going to ask questions myself either, and I believe we can now break for lunch. Sorry, I think we have a question. Sorry. It's not a question, just I would like to say to the four panelists how happy I am for having had a chance to listen to you, to all of you, to the four of you, with your different style, and how loyal you are to the common service. And we see that this is what moves you all. So I wanted to say, as director of Casa Africa, I've been director of Casa Africa for 2 years, and I've always been very curious to see if Casa Africa has contributed to a common good, and I've analyzed what Casa Africa has been doing since 2006 as an instrument for public diplomacy from the Spanish government and the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And one of the great satisfaction has been to be able to analyze, at the light of this seminar today and tomorrow, what has been the role of Casa Africa in all of this. So I just want to thank you all that have been in Casa Africa since its beginning, because I always had collaboration from the Instituto Cervantes, from the AECID, from the Spanish University Forum. This is not the first one. There had been at least, according to my knowledge, 4 important seminars with representatives of Spanish universities together with other countries, and very interesting decisions have been taken, especially the universities in the Canary Islands, due to their geographical location, have always cooperated with Casa Africa. And in those 4 seminars, the concern about the teaching and learning of Spanish has always been present. And there was a meeting in Madrid, coordinated by the Complutense University, another one in Mozambique, a 3rd one in Las Palmas, a 4th in La Laguna, and there was going to be a 5th one held in Cádiz. But this is what has been the past. We're not improvising here, and I believe that steps have been made and also achievements. We have been consolidating a position of Spain in defending cultural and scientific approaches in the African continent. And those of us that live in Africa, in the African continent, specifically in the Canary Islands, I was very happy to hear to some of the panelists here to make this reference. Canary Islands is an archipelago that belongs to Western Africa. That's a reality, but it's not only that. It's also that as an ultra-peripheric region is the only regional government in Spain referenced at the European Union Treaty, and therefore we can have this role. This is just my reflection to all of you, to the 4 of you, and is an optimistic one. And again, to acknowledge your excellent task. The fact that in Dakar there is now this small classroom that will be a center of the Instituto Cervantes. And if you allow me, Mr. Minko, Mamadi, those of us that have been on the front line, we have seen arriving by the sea thousands of your fellows coming from Guinea Equatorial or Guinea-Bissau, from Western Africa. And we wouldn't be happier if we could continue helping and supporting, not only in saving of their lives, but cooperating so that nobody endangers their own life in the Atlantic Ocean through those small boats that do not have the necessary safety measures. So how can we do it? Through culture, through academic cooperation, through economic cooperation. And this is in the philosophy of your presentation. Thank you, and I apologize for this small presentation, but it's just because I feel very happy after listening to all of you, feeling so proud to be part of an institution that has also participated in the organization of these sessions and also in the previous 4. Thank you, Pepe.
¿Alguna pregunta más?
Question?
Bueno, pues en caso contrario, yo creo que podemos bajar.
We're now going to break for lunch, and we'll be back in the afternoon.